Hey, it's Dan, and welcome to Unified Gaming. So in this video, I want to break down my ranged MAGBLADE PvP build. This thing is ridiculous. It has awesome sustain, great damage, is really fast, so highly evasive, and has awesome defense. Honestly, it's one of my favourite ways to play Magical Nightblade this patch. If you haven't played a MAGBLADE like this in a while, give it a go. You'll be pleasantly surprised. As with the build itself, I'm going to go through everything, and I will be posting gameplay in a separate video giving a gameplay guide, so you can really focus on how this is set up, because there are quite a few intricacies, things that you wouldn't expect, like using an Inferno staff and much more. If you like my videos and you want to stay up to date with that content, then do subscribe and leave a like and a comment. Let me know what you think of this build. And as always, a massive thank you to all the people on Patreon and all the YouTube members who help support the content. They get early access, exclusives, and much more. There's details down below. As with this build, what are we doing? Race wise, you have a choice. You either go Dark Elf or Khajiit. Out of the two, I think Dark Elf is better for 1vx because of the resist flame. It really helps as we're a vampire stage 3. You also get more stamina, which means you can roll dodge a bit easier. And the damage is nice as it buffs our damage and our healing. If you are a Khajiit, it works just as well, so I wouldn't panic. I've also been playing around with High Elf on a different character I have, and that works fine too. So Khajiit, Dark Elf, High Elf, Breton. Race won't make or break the build. Just change a glyph or two depending on if it's a damage race to a sustain race or vice versa. For our attributes, we have 32 in health, 16 in magicka, 16 in stamina. You want around 30,000 health, give or take. My health assumes you have the same race, you have all prismatic glyphs, and the same quality. If you're unsure, 30,000 health, the rest in magicka will be absolutely fine. If you 1vx and fight outnumbered, which I have been on this build recently, I've been putting more stamina in just to get around 19,000, so I can roll dodge a bit more, CC break. It really helps. And for those regens and that damage, this goes up really high. Recovery when we're fully buffed is like 2,400, and our damage is like 6,000, so we have really good damage. For the Mundus wise, we are using the Lover Mundus. This is the most consistent damage Mundus. Yes, the Shadow will give us more damage and more peak, but it's not consistent, so the Lover ends up winning in a longer fight. If you play in no CP Battlegrounds, I would suggest that you go down to the Atronach Mundus. The Atronach Mundus will give you more magicka recovery, and this is very helpful. The Atronach Mundus is nice because it works in no CP, whereas your CP don't, so you do lose some sustain. So you'll see with this we have 1,700 recovery, with potion it's 2,000, and with our sets it's like 2,500. If you play in Cyrodiil and you're in group play, the Lover is more damage. If you play in Battlegrounds and you can sustain, the Lover is more damage. But the Atronach is a really good one to start with if you are new to Magical Nightblade, as it is quite a spammy skill class. Going through the consumables, I use Citrus Fillet. This gives us max health, max magicka, and recovery. If you can't afford this, the cheaper version is Potent Brew, so Witch Mother's Potent Brew. It's almost identical in stats, it's just a lot cheaper to use, so this is a great alternative. The reason we use this is that sustain is very useful on Nightblade. If you don't want to use that, however, you could go with something like Bewitched Sugar Skulls, change a glyph or two, get more stamina, but I think Citrus Fillet and Witch Mothers were the most, I had the most success with those. And if you wanted just more stam sustain to roll dodge a bit more, Jewels of Mistral can be nice. But please note that I do sneak a lot when I play this, and you'll see this in the gameplay guide where I sneak an awful lot, which does turn off our stam recovery. So I find this food is generally wasted if you do the sneak. I also use double dot poisons, which are really helpful, so I would suggest getting these two. I'm now going to go through the skills, and I have scribed versions and non-scribed versions, so do pay attention to both, and I'm going to give you a breakdown of what we're doing and why. First and foremost, you have to be a vampire. Vampirism gives you Dark Stalker, which means we can sneak without being slowed. We get damage when we come out of sneak, so out of invisibility. So when we get in sneak, we pop out, damage buff 5 seconds. If we use invisibility and it ends, the damage buff will also apply. So this is just 3 damage. We then get Undeath, which is essentially a defensive set. So it's a really, really good passive. It's why everybody's a vampire in PvP. So yes, you take more fire damage. Yes, your skills cost more, but we have a sustain set with us. We also have really high sustain anyway. And we get that mitigation, which offsets the fire damage as it is. Plus we're a Dark Elf. So Vampirism, in my opinion, is needed. As for the other skills, how do they work? I'm going to quickly buff up to show you what they look like roughly. Please note that I can't put on all of my sets because of some of the stuff we are doing. Our spammable is 9,600 Swallow Soul. It's almost 10,000 with our other set, so really high. We have this as a way to heal and do damage. As you are casting this, every time you cast it, you get health back. And if you're kiting, you still get health. So that will still be applying every 2 seconds. And if you put on the dot with them, one of the other heals will be applying. So we're getting health even while we're kiting around. So it's really, really nice. The other skills we go through, and I'm just going to buff up again just to show you the tooltips because I think that's quite useful for you to see. We have Cripple, which is almost 20,000 with our sets. This is basically an immobilize and it's a snare and it does some initial damage. It's a really good skill. We then have Dazing Soul, which is a new scribe skill. This is the Willed Soul skill from the Soul line, and it will be a stun, a damage over time, and major breach. So it's an armor debuff, it stuns the enemy, and it's a small dot. Really, really good. This cannot be replaced with anything else. There is no skill like this currently. So if you are not on you don't have scribing, you're going to be lacking that stun, and it will works without it, but just please note that you can't get this any other way. We then have Shadowy Disguise, which gives us invisibility, and Merciless Resolve. As we do damage, this charges up. Our bow then gets ready to do really big hits. If we obviously put all our damage buff and stuff, you'll see our bow is 22,000 with our other sets like 24, so it hits really hard. And then for the ultimate, you have a choice. You either go with Meteor, so Shooting Star. This hits really hard and it's ranged, which works brilliantly with this new skill. So we normally weave, charge up the bow to 5 stacks to get that massive hit at the end. We then cast we cast Meteor, Dazing Soul, then Merciless Resolve. What will happen is the Meteor will animate on them. They'll get stunned by Dazing Soul. They are rolling or moving and don't block. Meteor then hit them, and your spec bow's in the air, which then hits them. You get crazy burst at range, almost one-shot kind of territory. If you want to play more melee, you could swap this to Incap. Incapacitating Strike hits incredibly hard. This into spec bow, so Merciless Resolve, is almost a one-shot combo. It's so much damage, and it boosts everything by 20%. This dot gets 20% boost. This dot here gets 20% boost. This gets 20% boost. It's really, really strong. The final ultimate you can use is if you go into Soul Magic and use Soul Assault. Soul Assault when we are buffed, just to show you that. The Soul Assault is 91,000. It hits stupidly hard. The downside is this is a channel, which means when you cast this, you can't use any heals yourself or do other stuff. If you use this as your execute. You do your damage, and this is an execute when they're low health. It will kill most people, and because it's such a rare ult to use, most people don't know how to counter it. Can it be countered? Yes, with block kills. Is it the best ult? No, but it's fun and it is viable. Out of the 3, I really like going between Shooting Star and Incap. I think Incap's the most consistent because I can choose when to use it. It also helps get people off me, especially if you don't have access to Dazing Soul. It gives you a stun that you might lack otherwise. For the back bar, we have Leech and Strikes. This is a free heal over time. See this as Living Dark from the Templar. When you cast your dots on somebody, your heal will just be going for free. So we're doing nothing here and we still get free healing. If we put on the Swallow Soul, we've got that healing coming in even faster. We chuck out Vigor. Now you see we've got lots of healing just from one person, that's ourselves. So it's a really good skill, and all it needs you to do is just to cast a dot on somebody to get free healing. It's really good. It's got a 1 second cooldown, but the dots will just always tick that. And after 10 seconds you can cast this again for 300 odd health, so really cheap, to get 2000 health, magic and stamina. So it's a sustain skill, it's a heal over time, it's a very good skill. Every 10 seconds or so use this because it's free sustain. For our healing, our burst heal, we are using Healthy Offering. It's 14,000. It gives us minor mending, which makes our heals even bigger. 15,000 when we spam it. And we have Resolving Vigor, which is over 20,000. And with our set, it's like 24,000. And when we're next to a keep, these go up even higher. This is like 26, 27 with a keep. And this is about 17, 18 with a keep. The Resolving Vigor is also used for minor protection. Minor resolve, sorry. So when we do this, we end up getting 33,000 resistances, which are really good. And we have loads of crit resist, which we'll see in a little bit. The final skill we use is Degeneration. It's a damage buff and a good dot. So this is really great. If you want to run Structured Entropy, which is better for 1vx situations, you simply go and change your potion and use Spell Power Potions. These are really good. And with the potions, if I haven't touched it already, try potions as always. It covers everything. But if you do go with Structured Entropy for an extra heal, Spell Drought, so Spell Power Potions are really good. What do you do if you don't have Scribing? If you don't have Scribing, you need Major Breach. The way to fix that is to go to Destruction, slot Elemental Susceptibility. You've now fixed it. You will, however, find that you don't have a good defensive ultimate or like skill to get out of trouble. So when you're being attacked and you have the Wield Soul stun, Dazing Soul, you can cast this on something and stun them and then get into Cloak. It's a really good getaway button. The issue is that without that, you can't do this combo. So then I would suggest that if you don't have access to Scribing, go on your back bar, and if you change Degeneration, and obviously, as you can see, this is on the PTS to save me gold. All of this has been tested on live and stuff. It's really, really good. Structured Entropy will give you a heal over time. That will then help offset the fact that you can't stun people, because that stun is also a defensive kind of mechanic, which really helps keep you alive. So if you don't have Scribing, do consider using Structured Entropy instead, and Susceptibility, which will really help. The other thing you might want to also change is do consider running the Concealed Weapon instead of Degeneration and use the Spell Power Potions. You lose a dot, but you gain 15% movement speed, which means you walk at this speed. And with Race Against Time, we move really fast without Sprint. With Sprint, we hit Movement Cap. You don't need that Concealed Weapon to hit Movement Cap on this build, so that is just something to note, but that is an alternative option too. Me personally, I find the dot is very helpful. I want to go through now the champion points quickly and then the sets. With the CP, on the blue ones we have Fight and Finesse, Master at Arms, Deadly Aim, and Ironclad. This setup I use if I'm essentially in a smaller group or I'm kind of just doing more 1v1s, where I don't need that much mitigation because we have lots of defense anyway and lots of healing power, so I'd rather have a bit more damage. If you are fighting outnumbered, I would suggest that you drop Deadly Aim and run Jordan's Rebuff. The extra mitigation will help you. And if you're playing in a bigger group or in a duo where you've got lots of healers, so maybe you've got a pocket healer with you, drop the Ironclad, run Wrathful Strikes for even more damage. For the red ones, we use Celerity for movement speed, Pain's Refuge, which is just damage mitigation, Slippery, which gives us free CC break, so this is great because it saves stamina, and Fortify for more armor. This is like 2.5% damage reduction. If you don't want to run this and you want more sustain, drop Fortified and run Sustain by Suffering. That will really help you out. And for the green ones, we have Steed's Blessing for move speed always when we're out of combat, and Sustaining by Shadows, which helps us sneak around cheaper. The final thing now is to go through the sets, and if you like my videos and kind of more in-depth guides, then let me know in the comments below, and if you haven't done so already, do subscribe as there is gameplay on the way. I also want to say a massive thanks to everyone at Patreon and on YouTube who help support with just that stuff. It really means a lot. You get early access, exclusive content, and much more. For the sets, we are using Rallying Cry front bar. Rallying Cry gives us critical resist, which makes us tankier, and damage. It is like the best solo set. If you are playing in a group and somebody else has this, it doesn't hurt to still use it, but you could probably swap it for something else like Clever Alchemist instead, or War Maiden. So War Maiden just buffs all of your damage. So this is the alternative, in my opinion, that I would use, because this is a really, really good set. Or you could go with, as I said, something like Clever Alchemist if you wish, or Tarnished Nightmare. Any set that will just give you damage. I then use double dot poisons. On the staff, you'll notice that this is a lightning staff sharpened. And the way in which this is set up is that when we swap bar, Rallying Cry turns on. When we swap bar back, Rallying Cry turns off. Our second set is Wretched Vitality. I use an Inferno staff, which is really, really odd. The Inferno staff for Nightblade is one of the better staves, in my opinion. So hear me out. If you go down to the Destruction skill line, most people run an Ice Staff for Ancient Knowledge. Equipping an Ice Staff reduces the cost of blocking by 36% and increases the amount of damage you can block by 20%. Block is cheaper and you can block more damage. That's what that means. That's great. The problem is on a Nightblade, when we're on this bar, we want to be not blocking. We don't want to be in black combat. And so by doing this, we can't move. We're really slow. We're vulnerable. Instead, what we normally do is race against time and roll dodge, swap and go to cloak to escape. At which point, that block passive that you get from this Ice Staff, from the Ancient Knowledge, doesn't do anything. It's a waste of a passive. And if we have Tri-Focus because you want the AoE heavy attack on the Lightning Staff, well, we can't because the Ice Staff uses Magicka to block. So it really just punishes us. We have to drop this passive, and this doesn't really benefit us. Instead, I use an Inferno Staff. An Inferno Staff gives you a free dot on heavy attacks. Now, the dot doesn't seem high, but when you buff up, it's actually pretty noticeable. So when we put on our dot, you'll see that this is 19,160. So 19,010. If you compare this to Soul Trap, so 17,985, that's when the buff fell off, 7,400. It's essentially Soul Trap. This is a free dot, this passive alone, and it's really easy to apply. It also updates and takes into account your current bar, so your current bar will boost the damage, and your damage buffs will also boost it again. So what does this actually mean? Well, when we see a target, the way that I open up is I go with my Vigor for armor buff. I then go and put on my Race Against Time for movement buff. So I go Vigor, Race Against Time. I heavy attack and go for Degeneration. That lands, that's 2 dots on them now. I swap bar, cripple, element of susceptibility if I don't have Daze and Soul, and then weave, 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 and then bow when it's ready. If you have Daze and Soul, you can chuck in Daze and Soul instead. So you go cripple, then you do Swallow Soul a few times, and Daze and Soul spec bow. But that gives you loads of extra dot damage, and that's why we use an Inferno Staff, because it's free damage. As with the set loadout now, we are using Rallying Cry Lightning Staff front bar, Wretched Vitality Inferno Staff back bar defending. We have Magma Incarnate. This is a monster set that when we heal ourselves, we get Minor Courage and Minor Resolve. This is really nice as it's just free damage and free defense. And what's nice is this Leech and Strikes procs that passive. So if we just put on, say, Cripple, Cripple does not heal us whatsoever. But because we have Leech and Strikes on, it will proc. So what will happen is that you can end up turning this set on really easy when you start to put on your dots on them. So it's a really, really good way to do that. So basically, the point is this turns on for free. If for some reason you want more burst, you can swap this out for Battle Org. Battle Org is more burst damage on the ultimate. If you want more ult gen and more just defense, Bloodsworn's a great option. For 1v1s, Jorel War Chief is really nice. It stops people healing. You got cloaks, so you can kind of play around it and get away from that penalty a bit more than they could. But you do lose some healing if you use this. This is only good in 1v1s. The other option is Kunar's Nightmare. This is essentially a free stun. If you don't have Scribing, use this instead. It's a stun that you lack. And if you do have Scribing and you stun somebody, you get a massive hit anyway. So these are all good options to use. And you can always go with good old Engine Guardian for just... It absorbs damage. People hit it instead of you. So it's a passive defense. And it also gives you stats. So loads of options there for the monster set. I then have One Piece Trainee, Rallying Cry Sash, Wretched Hands, Legs and Feet. I then use Rallying Neck and Rallying Ring and Mark and Ring. The full loadout looks like this. It's Rallying Cry Lightning Staff Sharpened, Wretched Vitality Defending Inferno, Magma Incarnate Monster Set. This is Heavy Armor Reinforced. The chest is Heavy Armor Reinforced Trainee. The shoulders is Reinforced Heavy Magma Incarnate. Light Rallying Cry Sash Impen. Medium Armor Wretched Vitality Hands. Reinforced Wretched Vitality Legs, Heavy Armor. And Medium Wretched Vitality Feet. The reason you want three Heavy Armors is because of the Shadow Barrier passive. Having this means that we can get more defense. And if you want, you could drop the shoulder down to medium if you can get the drop. I just don't have the right drop on live. For the jewelry, we have 3 Swift for more movement speed. I found that the movement speed is more helpful, especially on a Nightblade. If you are at range, it's more useful than the bonus damage. The bonus damage isn't that much, and the speed is more valuable in my opinion. And Marken is a great mythic. It's just damage and it's armor. But you could swap this for something like Death Dealer's Feet, which is really good. Or you could go and use the new mythic, the Saint and Seducer, which is very good. A bit tedious to farm, but a really good mythic nonetheless. So if you can get this, give this a go. It's really, really good. But that said, it's a bit awkward. You've got to farm it. It's Marken most people have now. It's just a good mythic. But that's it. That's how it all works. I know this is a slightly longer than usual build video, so I do apologise. But there's a lot more to kind of go through because it plays really differently to how you would expect. If you like, though, the build and what I do here, then likes and comments really help. And I will be posting gameplay very soon, so I would suggest that you do subscribe to stay up to date. And as always, a massive thanks to everyone at Patreon and on YouTube who help support. They get exclusive content, early access and much more. If you want to support myself there, there's details down below. But until then, I'll catch you in the next video on the next stream. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.